11.
Do you know a high school student who knows how to work hard, compete, and be a giver in everything they do? Do you know a high schooler who excels in the classroom, who exemplifies school spirit, and is involved in improving our community? Nominations for the Mattress Firm Student of the Year are now being accepted. Nominees should exhibit 3 core values: working hard in all they do, competing in school clubs, sports, or other activities, and giving back to their local communities. A new student will be selected for each week of the fall and spring semesters. They'll not only get a chance to share their story live on Tootell and Nuanez, but they'll also have a chance at a $3,000 college scholarship at the end of the school year. Head to mattressfirmmt.com/students to make your nominations today, and let's celebrate our hardworking students.
Holidays making you a big winner for your big game party. Yep, no football party is complete without plenty of pop, and Holiday has a big deal just in time for the big game. Any 2 12-packs of Pepsi are only $7.98. You heard right. Mix and match any 2 Dew and Pepsi 12-packs for only $7.98. Score big at Holiday with this super deal on pop. Mix and match any 2 Pepsi 12-packs for only $7.98. Better rush in. It's only for a limited time and only at Holiday.
Looking your best is no longer a luxury. It's more attainable than ever before. Learn how Northwest Plastic Surgery Associates are reinventing cosmetic treatment right here in Missoula to make it more effective, less invasive, and more financially viable than ever before. Forget what you think you know about fillers, injections, and peels. At Northwest Plastic Surgery Associates, they can design a treatment program that's minimally invasive and meets your specific needs without sticking out. Restore youthfulness and reduce facial wrinkles around the eyes, forehead, and mouth with Botox. Restore lost volume and reduce signs of aging with Juvederm. Shed entire layers of skin with one of 4 different chemical peel options. They're not about Band-Aids or cover-ups. They're about real, lasting change that meets your unique needs. Book your consultation and learn how cosmetic treatment can bring your inner beauty to the surface.
Call Northwest Plastic Surgery Associates today, 728-3811, or visit nwpsa.com.
Gentlemen, this is a secure federal facility. Do you have your Montana Real IDs?
ID? I'm Captain Lewis, and this is Captain Clark.
I'm sorry, I can't let you in.
Can't go into federal facilities. Can't fly. Maybe we should just stay on the river.
We'll float home. Let me check the Google. What's a dam?
Discover more at mtrealid.gov. Available now.
Montana Real ID. It's the real me.
Brought to you by the Montana Department of Justice.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Tootell and Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television. I like football! Now, sports talk from Montana for Montana. Live from the Kurtz Polaris studio, here is Ryan Tootell and Coulter Nuanez.
All-decade teams. The Cats and the Grizz out. The Seattle Seahawks into the divisional round against Lambeau Field. We welcome in cornerback Trey Flowers. It is Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Outstanding to be with you on this Monday afternoon, the first full week back of the new year. Happy to be with you. Thanks for joining us. We are always live, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If you'd like to find us live on the World Wide Web, you can do that, 1029ESPN.com, 1029ESPN.com. You go there, you listen live via the stream. The stream is available wherever you are all the time. That's the beauty of it. The stream is there thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. If you would like to call, 329-1899 is the phone number, 329-1899, that phone number. All guests join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. We're going to do a special encore edition of the Montana Football Hour for you today with the Montana and Montana State all-decade team questions. Coulter has put together all-decade teams for the Cats and the Grizz there at Skyline Sports. We're not going to go through and enumerate these, but conversations about how these teams got put together and what the list says about these teams, both now, this last decade, and maybe the decade or at least the next year or two into the future. So we will get into that. Happy in about 30 minutes to welcome in Brody Grebe as well. Brody Grebe is a commit from Milestone, went to Milestone High School, went to, are you ready now, Choate Preparatory Academy in Pennsylvania, I think, Coulter. We're in agreement. We think it's in Pennsylvania. And then has now signed on to play for Montana State and Jeff Choate in Bozeman. He will enroll, or has enrolled at halftime here, mid-semester, or midterm, I should say, heading into the spring semester, and will start school at Montana State coming up in a week or so. So we'll happy to have Brody on here in the Montana Football Hour. We also,
upon further review, Choate Rosemary Hall Preparatory Academy is in Wallingford, Connecticut.
Oh, Connecticut. Okay. So, in the right direction, just had to go a little further. We'll look forward to talking to Brody Grebe about that in about a half an hour. In an hour from now, very excited to welcome in Seattle Seahawk cornerback Trey Flowers, second-year cornerback for the Seahawks, a fifth-round draft pick. Does that remind you of anybody? Fifth-round draft pick cornerback for the Seahawks? Richard Sherman, if you're wondering at home, also fits that bill. Went on to be pretty good, if I understand it correctly, both for the Seahawks and now, again, an all-pro for the 49ers. But Trey Flowers, in his second year with Seattle, got his first playoff win this past weekend, obviously there in Philadelphia, and now, don't look now, right? But the Seahawks and the Packers, I mean, my goodness, what these two teams have managed to pull together on the field the last handful of times that they've matched up. Unbelievable. So we will talk with Trey Flowers about the team, about the matchup, about the playoffs, even maybe about Oklahoma State, where he went and played some football for Mike Gundy. So looking forward to having him on. We also are going to spend a fair amount of time on basketball. Huge Big Sky Conference basketball weekend. Are you ready for this? On the men's side, everybody has a win, everybody has a loss. Everybody. The best team right now by record is the Montana Grizzlies. They're 3-1. The worst team is I don't know who. They're 1-3. In fact, I think multiple teams are 1-3 right now in the Big Sky Conference. But Montana lost on Saturday. Montana State lost both games of this road trip, Northern Colorado and Southern Utah. The Grizzlies losing at Northern Colorado. So we'll get into that. Also, the Lady Grizz suffered their first defeat. That was this Saturday, also against Northern Colorado. So we will discuss that. In fact, we have some sound for you from Shannon Schwayen and Emma Stockholm, a career night, 24 points for 22 or 24 points for Emma Stockholm. Outstanding evening, but nonetheless a defeat. The Lady Grizz turned the ball over quite a bit in the second half of that basketball game as they ended up falling. And also, yes, we will spend some time on the NFL for what it's worth. Mike McCarthy, you probably heard this by now, is the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. But an unbelievable weekend. How about both 6 seeds going on the road and beating the two, in one case outstanding, in the other case still the New England Patriots 3 seeds. Stunners, man. You like that, Coulter? I know you do like that with the Minnesota Vikings and Captain Kirk finally getting it done in a big game. It wasn't prime time per se, but they're all prime time in the postseason. So there you go. That's our show outlook. It is brought to us by Shine Auto Detailing. ShineAutoDetailing.net online. You can get $20 off. In fact, a free winter windshield treatment if you mention Tootell and Nuanez when you go and set your appointment for an interior detailing. ShineAutoDetailing.net. Okay. Coulter, let's talk about this Montana Football Hour. You have put together, it's a great list there at SkylineSportsMT.com. Here's the one thing I want to know, because I got a number of questions here to ask you about this. Okay. But just in general, you've covered this. Now, this is your first full decade of being a full-time sort of Big Sky Conference journalist covering the thing, okay? Doing it for 10 full years. You know all of these kids and teams better than anybody. But when you went back and revisited this stuff for yourself, was there anything that you were like, oh, wow, I had forgotten this, or I'm surprised by this, even though you were there in the moment? Or you go back and you compile these lists and you go, my goodness, I hadn't considered this about these teams when you're putting this together.
Interesting question. I think that the list for Montana State. So I had 4 different stories because this was a lot of information to put together. I mean, you're talking about selecting.
You did offense and defense, right?
Offensive and defensive guys, yep. And, for example, like I named fullbacks for both teams, even though neither Montana or Montana State has operated with any sort of fullback really at all. I mean, there's not really been 2-back sets at either school hardly at all the last couple of years. But, a guy like Dan Moore for the Grizz, he was very memorable, even though his production, like at his best, his production was outstanding, but he was hurt most of his career. So he only rushed for about 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns in his career. But some of the highlights that Dan Moore produced are unforgettable. I mean, his rumble and stumble and touchdown run in the Cat Grizz game in 2011 from 47 yards out. I don't think anybody thought that 250-pound Dan Moore was going to show that kind of speed. Or when he caught the screen pass and hurdled the guy at App State and went 87 yards to the house to start the season the next year. I mean, those are unforgettable moments. And like Trey Robinson, a guy at Montana State who was a 2-time captain and an undeniable leader of the program, he was always the number 2 back behind Cody Kirk, even though he's a Nebraska transfer who had Big 12 talent coming out of high school. But his impact on the program was sort of immeasurable. And then, for the Cats at wide receiver, I only had 3 wide receivers on my Grizz team. I made a 4th spot on the Cat team because it was so hard for me to discern between Mitch Herbert, who had great individual success, and honestly, a guy like Kevin Cassis for Montana State this last year. He played his way onto this all-decade team the last 8 games of his senior year. I mean, he was a big play, highlight reel catch waiting to happen.
In a system that did not cater to the wide receiver at all.
And don't look now, but the kid was a 4-year starter who played with a bunch of quarterbacks who most people would say are not elite at all, the opposite of elite, and he still finished in the top 4 in school history in catches, yards, and touchdowns.
Yeah, not elite as throwers. Yeah, right.
So I made a couple concessions there in terms of the traditional lineup, but I thought that I'd say the 2 things that I learned or that I got from these lists were, 1, I think making the Grizz list shows you twofold. 1, the positions that Montana has always been able to and will continue to always be able to recruit elite talent at. Namely, the wide receivers were outstanding this decade. Yeah, that was the part where, I mean, Sammy Akim was a guy that I was really thinking about maybe is he up on the list, and eventually I didn't get there. He was like my number 1 honorable mention. But you look at the linebackers. I mean, there was all sorts of first-team, all-conference, all-American type guys. I mean, a guy like Josh Buss was a 2-time All-American, and he did not make the all-decade team for us at Skyline Sports. He was probably right there at number 5. But I just couldn't put him above Jordan Tripp, Brock Coyle, Caleb McSurdy, and Dante Olson. I mean, 3 out of the 4 of those guys were league MVPs. They're all All-American type players. And some might argue, well, Josh Buss was a first-team All-League guy. Brock Coyle never was. And that's an interesting discussion I want to have with you is how much do we let play into? Well, first of all, I think that the other thing that you learn is a lot of times you have to sparse through the all-league stuff, and you are going to put some recency and some proximity bias into it. But if you watched Brock Coyle play the second half of his senior year, he was a first-team All-League guy, and he didn't get first-team All-League when he was a senior because J.P. Kanagata and Jordan Tripp both did for Montana. They stole votes from him, basically. And the inside linebackers that year were Todd Davis, who still starts for the Denver Broncos, and Zach Browning, who was the newcomer of the year in the league that year. But in retrospect, Brock Coyle probably deserved it over Zach Browning when he was a sophomore.
Yeah.
And then on the Montana State side of things, anybody that watched Alex Singleton, almost good catch. Yeah. Anybody that watched Alex Singleton play his junior and senior year knows that he's one of the great linebackers in the state of Montana, either side. And now on the active roster for the Philadelphia Eagles, that's bearing out. Well, he got the worst snub I've ever seen for all league stuff when he was a junior. He had 130 tackles. He blocked like 4 kicks. I mean, he was in the backfield all over the place. I mean, I think he led the country in solo tackles that year, and he got honorable mention all league. So sometimes you got to parse through that stuff. But I think that it showed specifically the positions that these two schools have always been able to recruit at running back, linebacker, the spots we've talked about in terms of the stuff that Montana is going to give you, but also the way that some of the most consistent figures in the league have developed players, guys like Ty Gregorak at Montana and then at Montana State, Kane Ione at Montana State. I mean, those guys, it's no mistake that those guys are the veteran coaches that have been at the schools or been in the mix in this state for a decade plus, and they had a hand in coaching these guys. And I think the last thing that was surprising when you really put it on paper, we've talked ad nauseum about the downgrade in offensive line play, particularly at the University of Montana. And when you go through these lists, there's some good guys, definitely, but no one that was like the elite players like the Grizz had in the 2000s. I mean, if you were picking the 2000s offensive line, you have 15 candidates that were all unbelievable players.
Yeah.
Guys that went on to play in the NFL for years, and guys that were outstanding offensive linemen. Whereas there was not an interior offensive lineman for the Grizzlies between 2010 and 2019 that earned first-team All-League honors.
Yeah.
None. I mean, Cy Sermon was my number 2 center. Cy Sermon just had a great senior year, but it was the only year he ever played center in his whole career.
Right.
And he got second-team All-League honors. Great for him.
Right.
But, I mean, man, there was
one and done at the
there was
position.
really no competition.
Yeah.
I mean, Kelby Oyland, a guy who came in as a defensive line transfer, a very similar story to Cy Sermon. He played D-line, ironically, for Bobby Houck at UNLV, came to Montana, and then played center. It's the same model that they used with Cy Sermon here. Is just a different coaching staff that switched Oyland to center, but he ended up making my All-League team, even though he only played the position or my All-Decade team, even though he only played the position of center for 2 years. So I think that it's revelatory in terms of where it shows you the strengths that these programs have really had over the last several years, and also some of the weaknesses.
It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. When you're picking these teams, there's only one way for it to be easy, and that's like left tackle for Montana State, where there's 2 guys who are like 4-year starters back-to-back years, basically making up the decade, and done deal.
Right.
But it's hard to pick positions, either if there is a dearth of guys, which means there was maybe 6, 7, 8 guys playing the same position, or to your point, linebacker at Montana, there's so many great players that it's where is the cutoff going to come? But to you, what were the positions that were hardest to pick?
Man, I thought that the offensive line for the Cats was pretty cut and dry. Like you said, I mean, John Weidnar and Mitch Brott with a little splice of Dylan Mahoney in there. That was the only tackles they really had.
Right.
But I thought defensively, the D lines were surefire as well, with the exception of the second defensive tackle spot. But I think everybody in the world that would make an all-decade team for these 2 schools would pick Caleb Schreibeis and Brad Daly, the 2 Buck Buchanan Award winners, as your ends for Montana State, and Zach Minter, a first-team All-American at D-tackle. And I think that it's pretty hard to argue Tyrone Holmes and Zach Wagaman as the ends for Montana. I mean, they're the 2 leading sack guys in the history of the school. Yep. So, I mean, those guys, surefire.
Yep.
Caleb Kidder, maybe you have a little bit of wavering on the D-tackle because he did play D-end his senior year, but I talked to this wasn't just myself and my brother. I reached out to some guys that were current and former coaches. Sean Rainey at SWX Montana, he went over my list too and gave me some feedback. Kyle Sample, who used to work for me at Skyline Sports, he gave me some feedback on the Grizz. I ran my Montana State list by Bill Lamberty at Montana State, the sports information director, so that we had some feedback from other spots.
A little bit of peer review.
Right. But I think that the interesting part is that the spot that was hardest to pick in terms of the most good players was linebacker at Montana, no question. We considered 10 guys for 4 spots. And when you're leaving guys like JP Kanagata and Jeremiah Kose, who played professional football in the CFL, guys like Josh Buss, who almost certainly would have played pro football if not for injuries.
Yeah, if he would have chosen to, or physically been able to. Right.
Those are more, let's say, appealing arguments where you're trying to you're picking between a whole bunch of really great guys, and the guys that are getting left out are still really, really good. Whereas then when we were picking the secondary at Montana, Tremaine Johnson, that's another area where it was just very revealing the step back that Montana had taken. If you look at the 2000s, think of just the war you'd have at safety. Whether it's Vince Huntsberger, 2-time Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year, or Trey Young, a Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year, or Colt Anderson and Shan Schillinger, who both got drafted, to Eric Stoll, who was an amazing player who kind of lived in those guys' shadows before taking over in 2010. I mean, that would be a huge battle. When you're looking at running back last decade for the Grizz, guys like Chase Reynolds, Justin Green, and Lex Hilliard. But in the Montana secondary from this last decade, it's Tremaine Johnson, absolutely no doubt about it. But then the other cornerback spot, we were just kind of flipping a coin between a whole bunch of solid but not necessarily unbelievable
elite,
Hall of Fame type guys. We ended up going with Nate Harris because he was the guy that had the longest contribution of success. I mean, he was a 3-time All-Big Sky pick, even though he was honorable mention, and third team.
Yeah.
But there was no other guy that was higher than third team in the secondary. with the exception of Matt Hermanson in his senior year, 2014. He got first team as a safety. But the corners, I mean, Houston Roots, Anthony Chief Goodwin, Josh Denard, J.R. Nelson, Ryan McKinley, those guys are all pretty good players,
right.
but they're not Tremaine Johnson.
Well,
no one is.
No shame there, but I get your. I see your point.
So I guess that there's two different ways of talking about who was the hardest spots to pick. When you're deciding between 10 candidates, that's a lot more fun to me than trying to find worthy candidates, and that's kind of how it was with the interior offensive line and the defensive secondary, especially with the Grizz.
When you look at these two teams and their and the way it shook out for the all-decade stuff, if you want to debate which all-decade team you think is the better of the two, you're certainly welcome to, say that. But I'm interested in what does the all-decade team say about the state of these programs as it's been for the past 10 years and as it is now, presently. And there's you can certainly overread into something like that, but also the difference from the 2000 to 2010 offensive line, the University of Montana, and where you would have been having to cut guys off,
yes,
as opposed to having really good players, but that's the list and that's all, is telling. And look,
totally.
it is not a story that nobody is a surprise to anybody. But when you look at that spot, those spots, and the things that Montana has been able to do well historically, or not as well recently, or vice versa, places where they've excelled maybe recently that they didn't before at one time, or certainly have. I mean, the linebacking crew of those last 10 years probably better than it's ever been, or certainly arguably so for the Grizzlies. And then the same question, obviously, for Montana State as well. But what do you think the import is from these all-decade teams to the present?
It's a very interesting question because I think when you're talking about an all-decade team, you're the best guy or one of the few best guys at your position over a 10-year span. Then that guy would automatically be associated as somebody you'd consider, within the scope of what the lens we're looking through, as a program legend, right? Like a guy that people are never going to forget. And when you look at the quarterbacks, I don't think people are ever going to forget Jordan Johnson at Montana.
Reset the show.
Yep.
And I don't think that people are ever going to forget Denarius McGee at Montana State. But then you look at running backs. People are never going to forget Cody Kirk at Montana State. But I'm not sure that people do remember a guy like Jordan Canada the way that they should.
Right.
I mean, Jordan Canada's fourth in school history in rushing yards.
Yes.
He just happened to come right on the heels of Chase Reynolds, who came right on the heels of Lex Hilliard and Justin Green, all who went to the NFL.
Yeah.
So people kind of forget that Jordan Canada, he was a 1,200-yard, 12-touchdown guy his senior year. He's got 3,500 rushing yards. He's not necessarily remembered with that same legendary status. So I think that there's certainly been some guys that have played there. There's guys that, Mitch Brott was on this team, and he's a guy that people will never forget at Montana State. Braden Conkle, same thing at safety. But I think that, especially if you were to compare and contrast this to that first decade of the 21st century, especially when you're looking at the Grizz, every guy that would make that team, I think, is a guy that you'd consider a quote-unquote program legend. And I just don't think that they were to that point. But that's also reflected in the fact that, those guys played for 4 national championships. These two teams, none of them made it farther than the Final Four.
Right. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We're going to have Brody Grebe on here in about 10 minutes from now. He's a Montana State commit. He's from Milestone originally, but then went on to Choate Prep Academy in Connecticut, and is now returning to the state of Montana to play for the Bobcats, to play for Jeff Choate. So we'll look forward to having him. And again, at the top of the hour, Trey Flowers, Seattle Seahawk cornerback Trey Flowers. Colter, how many guys are on the current rosters that are also on the team? And I'll include seniors that are graduating right now. But was there more? Was there a school that had more guys currently rostered that made the team ultimately?
Well, so let's see. Montana State, Mitch Brott on offense.
How many underclassmen?
None. 1.
Troy Anderson.
2. Troy Anderson at Montana State and Samari Toure at Montana. That's another thing I thought was revealing, was just the evolution of the game was very revealing in the statistics of the receivers. And honestly, the quarterback too. Jordan Johnson, when he came back from his whole saga where he was suspended and then expelled and put on trial and eventually acquitted, that year he came back, he threw for about 3,500 yards. And that was the largest yardage passing total in this decade by a Montana quarterback. But Dalton Snead threatened that this year, even with missing games.
Yeah.
But you look at, before this decade, I think there had been 8 1,000-yard receiving seasons in the history of the University of Montana. Samori Toure broke Mark Mariani's single-season record this year. He had almost 1,500 yards receiving. Sammy Akim had back-to-back years of 900-plus yards, so he was in kind of the top 15 range single season ever. Ellis Henderson made the team, and he was one of the only 1,000-yard. He had 1,000 yards when he was a sophomore.
Yep.
Jamal Jones had back-to-back 1,000 yards. So you're talking about 5 out of the 13 1,000-yard seasons in school history have come in the last 10 years. I think that's indicative of the state of the game and just how much more prevalent passing it is.
And also, Calder, how much about just the number of plays?
Number of plays, sure.
From in this past decade, certainly compared to the previous one, and if you want to go back into the 90s, it's not even close. You're a game that was played in 1995, you would need to play 6 quarters to get just the reps that you get in basically 4 quarters now, and that is meaningful,
Yes.
and to try and sort of assess, okay, well, what does 1,000 yards translate to now?
Mm-hmm.
Just when you talk about the way the game has changed, because it's not reflective of the skill per se, comparatively. A guy that went for 790 in the 90s, monster.
Totally. I think there's only been 3, maybe 4 1,000-yard receiving seasons in Montana State history.
Yeah.
And so, and none of the receivers on this list got there. And I think that it's indicative of the fact that both these programs, when you talk about feature receivers, there's been way more feature receivers this decade than last decade. You look at Montana, for example, during the height of the Bobby Houck days, 2007, between 2006 and 2009, you had Ryan Bagley, Mark Mariani, Ty Palmer, Jabin Zambrano, Eric Allen, Craig Chambers. They were spreading the ball all over the place.
Yeah.
You had guys that were very talented that in other systems
would have been
every single guy I just named
shredded.
would have had 80 catches and 1,000 yards at most places, but they were all playing with each other, and it was all sacrificing for each other. But I think that's another thing that's evolved is just the prevalence of the feature receiver. I want to ask you. I know you skimmed these things, but the one that I really went back and forth was all the linebackers. And I think that we talked about this before the show, but you look at my 4 choices for Grizz linebacker. Caleb McSurdy, who's the 2011 Defensive Player of the Year. Jordan Tripp and Brock Coyle, who played as seniors together on the 2013 team before both going to the NFL. McSurdy went to the NFL too, but blew his Achilles, and that was kind of case closed on his career. And then Dante Olson was the other one. Do you have any objections, or what do you think of the fact that in the case of Brock and Jordy, for example, those 2 guys both had great Grizz careers, and they were fortified by the fact that they played in the league for several years. What do you think of just the end of their careers really fortifying the beginning?
It matters, man. It does. You are from schools in the state of Montana. What you are remembered as a player at the school immediately goes to legendary status the minute you are playing in an NFL game. And people are tuning in to watch. I remember when Paul Plesnuski was injured, and Jordy Tripp got his first start for the Jacksonville Jaguars at Mike linebacker, and it was week 15 of a bad football team and Jags Dolphins or whatever, and I was locked in, man, to watch, a hometown guy, a Montana guy, play in the NFL in a meet, right there starting.
We have to go.
That is significant to the way that we remember these guys and think about them. And I don't know whether it should be or shouldn't be when you're talking about the all-decade teams for the schools, but it's real. I think it's real. So we'll continue this conversation a little later on. But next, happy to welcome in Brody Grebe. He is a linebacker from Musselshell, Montana, played 6-man for Milestone High School, and then went and took a prep year at Choate Rosemary Hall in Connecticut. He's going to join us now as he's now committed to play for the Montana State Bobcats and will be starting school there in a week from now. So looking forward to talking to him. Hey, at the Silver Slipper, it's all about great food, tasty beverages, and their urge to have a good time. Whether you're looking for an affordable family meal or a late-night game of poker, the Silver Slipper has what you're looking for. Right now, Silver Slipper is your football headquarters, 56 televisions to watch sports on, drink specials every single day, a full liquor store, Tarantino's Pizzeria as well. The Silver Slipper has all you need to watch your favorite games, playoffs, national championship a week from today. Plus, they have the friendliest staff in town. Visit online, silverslipperlounge.com for more info, and stop by today to see why the Silver Slipper is one of Montana's best-kept secrets across the street from Super Walmart on Brooks.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night, because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Survive and advance. The Seahawks continue their playoff run as they travel to Green Bay to take on the Packers in the divisional playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at 2. Kickoff at 4:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
There you have it. The Seattle Seahawks into the divisional round of the playoffs will renew their rivalry with the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field Sunday evening. Once again, you can hear the game right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio, the official Seattle Seahawks affiliate of Western Montana. It's been a great season, and it continues this weekend, 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon for pregame, kickoff at 4:40. 102.9 ESPN Radio in Western Montana, your home for the Seattle Seahawks.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
One team from the state remains undefeated in either men's or women's league. It's the Montana State women. The Lady Cats, seniors Fallon Freese and Oleana Squires each moved into the 1,000-point club as MSU blasted Southern Utah to keep the Bobcats atop the standings. Freese scored 20 points and Squires chipped in 11 as MSU shot 56% in the 91-56 victory. They are now 4-0 at Big Sky play. The 8 loss, that's their first on the year in conference play. Northern Colorado's 7th consecutive win over Montana gave them that first career loss, although Emma Stockholm did have an outstanding night, 22 points.
And finally, the MSU men struggled offensively for the second league game in a row. Southern Utah used a 12-0 run to post a 59-53 victory.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Nuanez, first Monday show of 2020. Happy to be with you. Thanks for being with us. Broadcasting live on 1029 ESPN Radio and SWX Montana Television, at 1029 ESPN on Instagram and Twitter, at Gus Tootell, at Skyline Sports MT on Twitter as well. Go check us out there. We go now to the Regis Brothers RV phone line. We're happy to welcome in a freshman, soon-to-be freshman at Montana State University, Brody Grebe from Muscle Shell, Montana. Originally played six-man at Melstone. Brody, thanks so much for being with us. How are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Well, we're doing great. We appreciate you taking the time out and being with us here. And, Brody, you got a very interesting story here heading into your college playing at Montana State, starting off with six-man football, but then heading into go play prep football for Choate Rosemary Hall. How did that all come about for you?
It was kind of a weird deal, actually. I was deciding if I wanted to go to play football last year, basketball, track, rodeo. I didn't really know for sure exactly what I wanted to do. And I got a hold of some guy got a hold of me, actually, and introduced me to these prep schools. And I didn't have any idea that these things were even a thing. And he talked to me about it, and he said, yeah, you can come go to a prep school for a year after you've already graduated high school, not use any of your college eligibility, and get a great education while you're at it. And I was like, well, if I don't really know what I want to do yet, it might be a good way for me to figure out exactly what I want to do for sure, whether it be basketball or football or whatever. So ended up going out there, loved the football part of it, and decided that's what I wanted to do for the next 4 years, and had a great time while I was out there.
Take us through your last couple years of high school, because you were kind of all over the place, playing Class B football at Roundup, but then playing basketball at Melstone. So, and I know your hometown's listed as Roundup, but Melstone's just up the road, but then there's some places on the internet that say you're from Muscle Shell. So take us through just all the details. Where do you actually live, and what was the last year of your high school career like, kind of playing at multiple different places, multiple different sports?
Yeah, so I actually live out of Melstone, like 25 miles. Claim Melstone as my home. Play football for Roundup. Roundup's like 35 miles from Melstone. I'm 25 miles on the other side, so I'm going about 60 miles every day for football.
Wow.
While I was doing rodeo in the fall as well. And then move on from football into basketball season, come back to Melstone where I'm playing basketball for my dad. He's the coach. And get done with rodeo season, so I'm just doing basketball in the winter. Then go into the spring where I'm doing track and rodeo as well again, and track for Melstone. And we had pretty good seasons in football. My last couple years, we went to the playoffs every year. My senior year, we beat Cut Bank in the first round, ended up losing in the second. In basketball, went to the state tournament senior year. Got third my junior year, and lost in a Saturday morning game. Lost in the semifinals my senior year. And then in track, I ended up winning 3 state titles in the long jump, triple jump, and shot put. And then got second in the 100. I was coming in first in the prelims of the 200-meter dash and ended up false starting, which was a bummer because I had a chance to win that one as well. Decided that I wasn't going to be able to do rodeo my senior year, which was a bummer. And, just finished it out. Had to go to Choate this fall. went right into football in August. Had a pretty good season. Went 5-3, I think. Earned all NEPSAC, which is a New England football league that they're in, honors. And went into basketball. Hit a game winner in one of our games. I think we were 5-3 when I was out there in basketball my first couple games, and ended up signing to Bozeman, and now I'm back home full time. So.
Now, Brody, there's a lot there. First of all, I think that's why they teach kids to start driving at 11 years of age on the east side, because when you got to go 60 miles one way, I mean, I don't know. I know your dad's the coach a little bit, but I don't know if they want to cart you around like that. That's incredible. Now, what I want to know this, though. What's your rodeo background? What were you doing? What events were you doing in the rodeo, and when you were participating?
Yeah, so I've grown up on a ranch. Live on a family ranch my whole life. My grandpa rodeoed, my dad rodeoed. So I grew up riding horses. I grew up rodeoing from a young age. And it just kind of transitioned right into high school. I went to the National Finals Rodeo. I qualified for the state of Montana and went down to Wyoming my sophomore and junior years. And that was in the calf roping my sophomore year and the steer wrestling my junior year. And I did calf roping, steer wrestling, and team roping when I was rodeoing.
Having so much sports experience and doing it all over the state and all over the country, take us through your recruiting process at Montana State then. Obviously, Montana State probably was on your radar when you were still living in Montana, but when did they first start talking to you? Was it in high school or was it after the prep school? And what helped you go from Roundup to Connecticut, and then now here you are going back to Bozeman?
Yeah, so I've been getting recruited by Montana State, University of Montana, for football for a while now, since like my sophomore year actually. Been going to camps, talking to them on the phone and stuff like that, and so I've been in constant contact pretty much all the way since sophomore, junior years, all the way until now. And just I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And I didn't know if I wanted to play basketball, which that was kind of one of their worries, is I never really had settled down to play one sport, and they didn't know exactly how much love I had for football, and if I wanted to play basketball in college or what the deal was with that. So I had football offers, I had basketball offers, NAIA for basketball, like the frontier schools, some out-of-state schools like Colorado School of Mines and stuff like that. And for rodeo as well, there was a couple of I was actually talking to some of the Montana State coaches and University of Montana coaches for rodeo as well. But eventually I just decided that going to Choate out to Connecticut for 1 year, which ended up only being a half, was going to be the best decision for me to see if I was going to be able to leave Montana, if I would like it living somewhere else, and exactly what sport I wanted to do in college and what I was going to be most happy doing.
Brody Grebe joining us. He's moving, has moved now to Bozeman to play football at Montana State. Will be starting school here in the next week or so there. And Brody, we just got a couple of minutes left with you, but I want to know, because it's such an interesting transition to go from rural ranch eastern Montana to Connecticut, of all places. And if I'm not mistaken, you had a bunch of offers to play in the Ivy League as well, which you passed on to come back to Montana. What was it like for you, just life-wise, in Connecticut to be, on the East Coast, or certainly in the eastern side of the country?
Yeah, it was definitely a culture shock. Going out there, never really being away from Montana a whole lot, just for short periods of time and stuff. But going out there, finding out my true self pretty much was the main thing, and learning like the culture out there, and also teaching them about my culture. A lot of the kids, a lot of my friends out there were just blown away when I tell them about some of the stuff that we do out here and how I grew up, and it's amazing to them. And like having friends that grew up in downtown Manhattan, living in apartments that are like multi-million-dollar and stuff like that. It's incredible to see the different walks of life that come through those schools and stuff like that.
Now, multi-million-dollar Manhattan doesn't mean nice, by the way. It's still flooding, still rat infested. Last thing for you here. How did you choose to go to Montana State? It's got to be more than just the name, right? You were like, well, I'm at Choate Academy. I got to go play for Jeff Choate. But what was it ultimately that swayed the table for you to go to Bozeman?
Yeah, like you said, I had those other offers, like those Ivy League, the academies. I was offered by Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Dartmouth, Cornell, Army West Point, Air Force, Holy Cross, bunch of schools out there. Came back with probably 10 or 15 offers, but at the end of the day, it mostly came down to just the love of Montana and being able to come home and play in front of my family and friends and home state. It's just, there's nothing like it coming back. And like when I tell people about Montana, it's a small community, the whole state. It might be a big area, but it's a whole tight-knit community, and everyone's going to have my back. So that was just the main thing.
Well, Brody, that's awesome, man. We're excited to watch you play here in the forthcoming years, and excited for you there at Montana State, and look forward to this. It's already been a great story, and may it continue on as you go through the college years. All right, man?
Sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate it. You having me.
You got it. Brody Grebe. I mean, what do you say? 10 out of 10, Coulter, right? Does it get better than that?
There's been a very small handful of guys that have played football and dabbled in basketball. Dan Bowden comes to mind when Wayne Tinkle was the basketball coach and Bobby Houck was the football coach. There's been some guys across the Big Sky Conference that have done football and track. Wouldn't that be something if there was a kid who was a rodeo / football guy? I mean, Montana State... We don't give the rodeo program enough love at Montana State. I mean, this is nationally elite. They won national championships in rodeo, and I don't think that Choate's going to let anybody skip spring ball to do calf roping. But you never know. But I mean, talk about a kid that bet on himself. What a great story, right? I mean, didn't let the small school stigma hold him back. Wanted to find what he really loved, and then went and found it across the country. And now,
to take the time to do it too. I mean, to take a year to find out about the prep school. Go, okay, I'm moving to Connecticut. Let's see what goes on here. It's amazing, And there's nothing like leaving home and coming back to it. It changes its complexion dramatically for the better when you're from a place like Montana. It seems to me. So that's fantastic. Yeah, pretty good to be offered by the Frontier Conference for basketball, and also the whole Ivy League. I believe he named all of them.
I believe that retrospectively, so this kid, he was a good prospect coming out of his senior year of football, and then after his senior year of basketball, he dropped 50 in a game. I don't care what level of basketball you're playing. You score 50 points in a high school basketball game, that's ridiculous.
Pretty good.
He ended up with 2,500 points in basketball, and then went out and smashed this Class C track meet with really legitimate times, no matter what level you're talking about. And so his recruiting continued to blow up, but I think it's cool that he found which element that he loves. But I mean, he picked up a basketball offer from Danny Sprinkle late on as well. So I mean, he's not just a really good basketball player; he's a Division I caliber basketball player, and he's a Division I caliber football player as well. So, and I think he's probably a Division I caliber rodeo guy.
One would bet.
So, kids that grow up on ranches in Montana with agricultural, rural backgrounds and rodeo skills, rodeo toughness, and also football abilities, those are pretty good prospects to have in your program.
Yeah, pretty good. Montana State, West Point. How about that? It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. 15 minutes from now, Trey Flowers going to join us. Seattle Seahawks cornerback Trey Flowers, as Seattle getting a win in the wild card. We'll head into the divisional round in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. So we'll talk with Trey Flowers coming up in about 15 minutes from now. But next, we circle back to a conversation about the state of the Montana State and Montana football programs as seen through the lens of the old decade teams right after this. Hey, it's a new year. With all your New Year's resolutions, one of the best things you can do is start fresh by starting clean. A clean environment will help inspire you to do great things. Start fresh and clean the inside of your car with Shine Auto Detailing. You can schedule a full interior detail with Shine Auto Detailing. Most of their clients say they make their car cleaner than it was when it was brand new. How about that? Schedule online at shineautodetailing.net. And also mention that you heard it here. Tootell Nuanez. They'll throw in a $20 winter windshield treatment for safer winter driving for free. Okay? So I'm Ryan and Coulter sent you on over there, shineautodetailing.net. They'll schedule right now, shineautodetailing.net.
The big skies are open. Go wild with Opportunity Reward Checking. Go ahead, jump, dance, shout. Opportunity Reward Checking will make you do that. Go wild when you get your 1% cash back on qualified debit card purchases. It all starts with an Opportunity Reward Checking account from Opportunity Bank. Visit a branch today to get started. Then go wild and spend your 1% cash back however you want. Go wild with Reward Checking from Opportunity Bank. Some restrictions may apply. Member FDIC.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today. 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up.
Refresh yourself at your local Town Pump. Get a 32-ounce fountain drink for $1.19. While you're there, grab a couple of everything bagels in the deli, 2 for $5. Town Pump, so convenient and right down the road from you.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
At the Desperado, you put wings in a basket, burgers on a plate, and beer in a mug. But what about bowls, you say? What about them? At the Desperado, there's only one place for bowls, and that's on the big screen TV. Cotton, orange, Fiesta, rose, peach, sugar. If it's a thing, it's a bowl. And if it's a bowl, it's on at the Desperado. All leading up to the big national championship game. Okay, so that's not a bowl, but yes, it's still on. Enjoy all the bowls with delicious plates, baskets, and mugs. Find your seat at the Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
If I do it again, I'm gonna freak out. If I do it again, I'm gonna freak out. If I do it again, I'm gonna freak out. If you do it again, I'm gonna freak out. So do it again.
We will do it again. Thanks to Brody Greavy for joining us. Awesome to talk to a kid like that for sure. And we will again have Trey Flowers, Seattle Seahawks cornerback, on here in about 10 minutes from now. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. You can also check us out on YouTube. You know, we're there on the YouTube. You can watch us live on YouTube. Follow or subscribe to the Tootell Nuanez YouTube channel. You can also, of course, watch it archived after the fact as well. Listen to it live, then watch how it actually transpired. Watch me knock over a full glass of water in the first segment of the show. All of those things is only available with the visual element of
that wasn't caught on camera.
Anyhow, We take a look.
You're just taking care of your clients, right?
That's right.
Give Town Pump some extra exposure. Thanks, Town Pump.
No, sir. And it's an indestructible glass. They knew what they were going to be like. We're going to give Tootell and Nuanez the studio cups. We better make them out of titanium, and they've done it. So it's the best cup in the game right there from Town Pump. Coulter, we were having a conversation. You did the all-decade teams for Montana State, offensive and defensive teams. At SkylineSportsMT.com. And we were having a conversation that covered a whole bunch of area, and we sort of started a conversation about linebackers, but I know that you had a couple more thoughts about the linebackers in particular.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think the official statistic was 13 of the top 22 tacklers in Montana history have played in the last 10 years, including many guys that played linebacker. Mm-hmm. And Dante Olson set the program record for all-time tackles in a career, and he basically did it in 2 years. But Montana had first-team all-league selections that did not make our all-decade team, like J.P. Kanagata, Herbert Gamboa, Kendrick Van Akron. Jeremiah Kose was a second- and third-team selections his 2 years at Montana. Josh Buss, Connor Strom, James Banks had a pretty prolific 2 years after he transferred from UAB. So I guess I just wanted to ask you, you made a point about just kind of the retrospective nature of analyzing guys like Jordan Tripp, Caleb McSturdy, and Brock Coyle after their careers are over because they made it to the NFL, and that obviously is a feather in your cap. And I think that was the other, you asked me what I learned, I think that was the other thing, is just that even though I think that Montana State, quote-unquote, won the decade in terms of success, I mean, they had 3 Big Sky titles and 6 playoff appearances to Montana's no Big Sky titles officially, and 5 playoff appearances, excuse me.
Yeah.
I think Montana State ended up winning 2 more games than Montana this decade. But Montana produced much more future pros, and that's been the case. I mean, Montana's done as good a job as anybody the last 20 years in the Big Sky Conference of producing pro players. But you watched every other of the guys I just named play as well. J.P. Kanagata, Herbert Gamboa, Kendrick Van Akron. So any of those guys that maybe should have been on the list or sneaks up there, or I mean, is it too hard to beat out the 4 that I had on there?
Well, I don't think that the 4 that you have on there are beat out. I do think that KVA gets a little. I do think that it matters that he didn't play in the NFL as it pertains to this list. Like if he had gone on to play, NFL football, special teams, whatever, then all of a sudden, what he actually was on the field, which was one of the monster tacklers that Montana's ever had, I think is also now all of a sudden you go, well, how can you leave him off? Like, here's what I think. I think when you look at the all-conference stuff or whatever, but just what they were on the field, what these players were on the field, when you're talking about what is the litmus by which I can't leave a guy off of this list, I do think that some of that is the NFL part of it. But I mean, Kendrick Van Akron played quarterback at Bellevue High School,
right?
People, and then came in, and the next thing you know, it's just fill gap after fill gap after fill gap, tackle. I mean, he was just unbelievably talented kid. And he's been coaching now too, right?
Oh yeah, he was a grad assistant at Montana State of all places, and now he's at Oregon State.
Right. So I mean, he's an up and comer in that side of things as well. But an outstanding. But can I argue with your list? No, I cannot. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. Hour 1 in the books. You can check out the first hour of the show if you missed anything on the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcasts. It is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotels. You can listen, subscribe, rate, review. We appreciate all that with the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Next up, top of the hour, open with a bang. Trey Flowers, cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle, a win in the wild card over the Philadelphia Eagles. They head to Lambeau Field to take on the Green Bay Packers, which is, it's a gem of a matchup if you ask me, in Wisconsin in the divisional round next Sunday. We will talk with him right after this. Hey, at the Silver Slipper, it's all about great food, tasty beverages, and their urge to have a good time. Whether you're looking for an affordable family meal or a late-night game of poker, the Silver Slipper has what you're looking for. Right now, Silver Slipper is your football headquarters. 56 televisions to watch sports on, drink specials every day, full liquor store, Tarantino's Pizzeria. Silver Slipper has all you need to watch your favorite games, the playoffs, and everything else. Plus, the friendliest staff in town. That's pretty good. Visit the silverslipperlounge.com for more info. Stop by today and see why the Silver Slipper is one of Montana's best-kept secrets across the street from Super Walmart on Brooks.
Hi there. It's Les Schwab Tires. Well, more like Les Schwab alignment and brakes and shocks and wheels and tires. Now, some tire places don't offer all that. They only sell tires. And we're not sure how they sleep at night because all those services affect things like steering and stopping. That's why we offer more than tires to help keep you safe. Stop by or book an appointment at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing since 1952.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Survive and advance. The Seahawks continue their playoff run as they travel to Green Bay to take on the Packers in the divisional playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at 2. Kickoff at 4:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
There you have it. The Seattle Seahawks into the divisional round of the playoffs will renew their rivalry with the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field Sunday evening. Once again, you can hear the game right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio, the official Seattle Seahawks affiliate of Western Montana. It's been a great season, and it continues this weekend, 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon for pregame, kickoff at 4:40. 102.9 ESPN Radio in Western Montana, your home for the Seattle Seahawks.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work and not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer, and Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. Some news for you. A week of Big Sky Conference basketball is in the books, and only one team from the state of Montana remains undefeated. That's the Montana State women. Lady Cat senior Fallon Frigie and Oleana Squires each moved into the 1,000-point club as MSU blasted Southern Utah to keep the Bobcats atop the standings. Frigie scored 20 points. Squires chipped in 11, and MSU shot 56% in a 91-65 victory. They're now 4-0 in the Big Sky Conference.
Only undefeated team, men's or women's side. Amazing. The Montana men had no answers for Bodie Hume and the Northern Colorado Bears in Greeley on Saturday night. Hume, who was last season's Big Sky Freshman of the Year, drilled a pair of three-pointers to spark a 16-3 run to open the game. He went on to hit 5 triples and score a team-high 22 points to lead Northern Colorado to a 74-66 victory. Montana State senior Kendall Manuel scored a career-high 30 points, while Montana lost in the Big Sky play for the first time.
In Missoula, Northern Colorado scored the first 8 points of the game and led for all but 69 seconds, handing the Lady Grizz a 67-58 loss. UNC's 7th consecutive win over Montana was Montana's first Big Sky loss this season, despite a career-high 22 from Emma Stockholm.
And finally, the MSU men really struggled offensively. Second game in a row, they lost 59-53 at Southern Utah.
This ESPN Sports Center is presented by Clark Fork Law.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Tootell, Nuanez. Trey Flowers, Seattle Seahawks cornerback, joining us in just a moment. We are broadcasting live on this Monday afternoon, and we are broadcasting from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. If you would like to listen live, you can do so on the stream. The stream is available wherever you get your internet. 1029ESPN.com. The Listen Live tab, it's there thanks to Opportunity Bank. Your local bank, your opportunity. Tomorrow on the show, very excited, Greg Bell covers the Seattle Seahawks for the Tacoma News-Tribune. Nobody better at covering the Seattle Seahawks, knowing what's going on, paying attention, knowing football, but also knowing the team inside and out than Greg Bell. So we're certainly excited to have him on. That will be tomorrow afternoon. Off we go now to the Rankish Brothers RV phone line, and we welcome in a second-year cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks playing in the divisional round of the NFL playoffs at Lambeau Field against Green Bay Sunday. Trey Flowers on with us. Trey, thanks so much for being with us. How are you?
I'm good.
Well, I would think that you're good. You got your first playoff win yesterday in Philadelphia. What was it like to play in Philadelphia, and then Carson Wentz, of course, goes down early, and how much did that shift the dynamic of that football game?
I think it changed us a lot. Our plan was to go in and really stop them from scoring points, and we held them to no touchdowns. They got all field goals, so our game plan worked.
When your defense is playing well, because I know you guys have been a little bit up and down, but when you play your best football, you guys have been so good defensively. What's going right? What's going well for Seattle when Seattle's playing good defense?
I think it's just everybody flying to the ball, everybody doing their job, and knowing what we can do. Me personally, I got to clean up some penalties, and I think it would have been a perfect game by the defense as a whole.
You guys have been so good on the road this season. I think just one loss on the road all year long, and as a fifth seed, then that's going to be the road, basically, to go to the Super Bowl, which is the goal. When you got to go now to Green Bay, how much confidence do you take into this game, knowing that, hey, you guys have gotten it done away from CenturyLink all season?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's our motto. We've done it before, and why not do it again? Why not keep going and take us to the Super Bowl?
Trey Flowers joining us, cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. And Trey, the Green Bay Packers, obviously a little different animal than Philadelphia, especially when Carson Wentz goes down. So when you take a look at Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and the rest of that offense, what do you see in Green Bay?
Like you said, just an explosive offense. They got a real good running game. They got Aaron Rodgers back there, and really good receivers to complement them. So they're a really explosive team, and we got our hands full this week.
The Seattle defense has been in a point of evolution this whole year because you guys added some guys to the mix. They've kind of gotten their feet wet. But as Jadeveon Clowney and Ziggy Ansah have sort of emerged and been able to contribute more, how has that changed just the entire complexion of the defense?
I think it just adds another weapon to us. We were playing good. We were playing up and down all year, like you said, and them getting back to it, them getting pass rush is an amazing thing. And them just doing what they have to do it's going to make everybody better.
Trey, it's such a unique sort of culture and philosophy on football that Seattle has with John Schneider, obviously, and Coach Carroll. When you get selected in the 5th round as a cornerback to Seattle, that rings a lot of bells of a guy who played there and was pretty good as an All-Pro in Richard Sherman. When you got there, what did you think? And did you feel like there was a certain parallel maybe between what you could be and wanted to be and what had already been established there?
Definitely. Yeah, just what's been established, what's the standard of this team and the secondary on this team. We feel like the Legion of Boom really changed the NFL forever, and they definitely changed the Seahawks. So we have an image and we have a standard to uphold.
Stepping in and trying to take over for those guys, they are one of the most legendary secondaries in NFL history. So did you guys feel pressure, or did that motivate you at all, trying to live up to that standard?
Yeah, I wouldn't say pressure. I mean, all we can do is be ourselves, and they trusted us by drafting us and putting us on the field, so it's up to us to do our job and do what we have to do to get wins.
Trey, I'm always interested in this part of it, kind of the regional part of it, because you're from Texas originally. You played college ball at Oklahoma State. You get drafted into the upper corner of the United States in the Northwest. What was it like when you go, oh, man, Seattle, Washington? I wonder what that's going to be like. What's it been like for you to be there the last couple of years now?
It's been great so far. They kind of fooled me. I got up here in the summertime when I got drafted, so I thought it was going to be like that all year, but I loved it, and people had me here with open arms, and it's a great community, great fan base, and I love it here.
One Montana connection from your days at Oklahoma State. I'm not sure if you crossed paths with this guy very much at all, but Jason McAdoo, who's the tight ends coach there at Oklahoma State, he was at Montana State for a long time, a guy I got to know pretty well. Did you have any crossover with Coach McAdoo while you were at Oklahoma State?
Yes, sir. He was there my senior year. Really good coach. I always talk to him when I get a chance, and I plan on making my trip back to Stillwater. So, yeah, I'll see him again.
The state of the Oklahoma State program, Mike Gundy's been there for so long now. So, that's a rare thing now in college football. What do you think has helped Coach Gundy stay at Oklahoma State as long as he has?
I think it's just his what he's teaching, his consistency, and how he molded us, I would say, how we grew up, and everything that he's taught me, I still use to this day. And I think people around him know that, and they're only going to keep going up.
Trey Flowers joining us, cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle playing in Green Bay. That game at 4:40 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We'll have it for you right here on ESPN Radio. And, Trey, you've now played in your second playoff game in your career. You're going to be playing in your third one, the first time in the divisional round. How different is the playoff atmosphere from the regular season?
I try not to think about it as much as I can. As hard as that sounds, as easy as that sounds, it's that you definitely feel the energy from different teams. And me playing defense is actually kind of quiet, so it kind of works to our benefit. Being on the road, we get to communicate a little better, so got to break down a lot of film, and hopefully we see something.
You know, the Packer-Seahawk recent history has been an insane one, from the quote, Fail Mary, to the NFC Championship game, which was the craziest game I've ever seen. I realize it's a unique day, it's a unique year, all that kind of stuff, but is the history of this sort of matchup play in, or have you guys thought about that, talked about that yet?
Definitely talked about it. I mean, everybody on the team has social media, so it's brought up to us, and I'm sure everybody's watched the same videos I have. I'm just grateful to be a part of it and add to it. You know, it's going to be a great game.
Everybody's chasing a playoff berth in the NFL, but now you're into the playoffs. You've won a playoff game. Now you're into the final 8 of the NFL playoffs, and so you're just a couple steps away from that ultimate goal of going to the Super Bowl. How's the mindset need to change to continue to progress and stay alive in this tournament?
The mindset changed last week. You know, just coming into the playoffs. It was a new season. Everything before didn't matter. Last game didn't matter again. So you just start over each week and keep going and keep going. Eventually you'll run out of games.
Well, Trey, we'll finish off for you with this. Finish the sentence for me. The Seattle Seahawks win in Lambeau if
we get takeaways, if we get turnovers, for sure.
Trey, we appreciate it, man. Great to have you on with us. We appreciate the time. Best of luck this week, okay?
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Trey Flowers, cornerback, Seattle Seahawks, joining us here on Tootell and Nuanez. Interesting to hear, we talk about this, talk about crowd noise and everything like that that's going on when you're playing, in, Minnesota, for instance, in New Orleans, how they're going to deal with that. But nobody thinks about the other side of the ball. The defenders have to talk to each other, too. And how hard is it to communicate if you're the Seahawks in CenturyLink? Pretty dang hard. Defensively, when everybody's just going crazy. So that's kind of an interesting thing that falls under the radar a little bit. But obviously the Seahawks, 17-9 victory by the Seahawks, which is one thing they don't do much of. I mean, Seattle is a sound team, if nothing else, especially from a turnover standpoint with Russell Wilson at quarterback. So that game, look, I want to say any playoff win that you get is a great win. It's also a win that Seattle should have had. Like at that point forward, right?
Especially after you take out Carson Wentz.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. When he goes down, this goes up a whole nother level, maybe 2 levels when you go into Green Bay. Now, you know me. I follow the Green Bay Packers very, very closely. I'm far from sold on the Green Bay Packers, even at 13-3 and everything like that. They have been the least impressive of the bye teams. Now, look, if you're getting a bye, good for you. You deserve it. Okay, great. Nobody's going to, say anything to a 13-3 football team. But nonetheless, it ain't the Baltimore Ravens. It's not even the Kansas City Chiefs, as far as I'm concerned, watching the way they've gone about it this season. And I also pay very close attention to the Seattle Seahawks. I think this is going to be another epic football game.
This season in the NFL has been very interesting because the element of knowing how to win and close games, which has always been of utmost importance in the league, has been on even higher level of display this year. We're down to 8 teams, right? Mm-hmm. And if you were to just look at the talent on the roster, the guys that are on the roster, I think you could argue that the Minnesota Vikings have more talent across the board than either the Packers or the Seahawks. And I have been naysaying the Seahawks since day one. But what do the Seahawks know how to do? They know how to win close. They know how to win close. Yep. And they have a leader in Russell Wilson who is an absolute winner.
Yeah.
And you see with a new breath of fresh air, Green Bay. I mean, how many games did Green Bay win this year that they would have lost last year just because of dysfunction, right? Yeah. I mean, they won 6 games based on Aaron Rodgers being more satisfied with the guy in charge. I mean, the Niners have really taken the league by storm with the way that they've used this unusual system on both sides of the ball, particularly the 4 running back set that they use and the prevalence of fullbacks and tight ends, power football. That's been a sort of a revelation. So have the Ravens. It's been sort of a revelation. Mahomes' fever is not as hot as it was a year ago, but the Chiefs still have some stuff that's different than everybody in the league.
Yeah.
When you got Mahomes who can throw it to Tyreek Hill, you got something that everybody else doesn't have.
Yeah.
And that's a huge advantage. But those 3 teams are the only 3 that are sort of outside the box. The rest of the teams that made the playoffs and that remain in the playoffs are the teams that know how to win. And I think it's been very fascinating to watch because I think it's been more sharp than ever, the margin of error in the NFL and just how close so many teams are to each other. Even if you're a really bad team, you're not that much away from a really good team. So much of the really good teams have really good records because of their ability to close games. That's it.
Yeah. Well, we will talk about this game and so much more about the divisional round of the playoffs throughout the course of the week. By the way, Green Bay installed as an early 4-point favorite. That is the smallest line on the board in the divisional round of the playoffs. So there you go. Again, our thanks to Trey Flowers for joining us this afternoon. We'll take a break, come back. Big Sky Conference basketball in absolute full swing. We'll spend some time looking at what happened over the weekend. Here's a preview. Nobody is left undefeated, and nobody is left winless in the entire
Ryan, turn yourself down a bit.
So we will get into that right after this. The Polaris New Year's sales event is on, and now is the time to find your perfect ride at Kurtz Polaris with financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months and saving up to $3,500. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and on Highway 83 in Sealy. The mountains are full of snow, and Kurtz has all the best machines, apparel, and accessories to take full advantage of the season. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. The most fun you can have in snow. Kurtz Polaris, winter awaits.
Marshawn in the backfield. Marshawn goes up over the top. He's in. Touchdown, Seahawks.
Survive and advance. The Seahawks continue their playoff run as they travel to Green Bay to take on the Packers in the divisional playoffs. Join Steve Rabel and Dave Wyman this Sunday. Pre-game at 2. Kickoff at 4:40. Right here on the Seahawks Radio Network.
Russell steps up in the pocket. Looks. Still looking. Now he fires. Ball is caught. Touchdown, Seahawks.
There you have it. The Seattle Seahawks into the divisional round of the playoffs will renew their rivalry with the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field Sunday evening. Once again, you can hear the game right here on 102.9 ESPN Radio, the official Seattle Seahawks affiliate of Western Montana. It's been a great season, and it continues this weekend, 2 o'clock Sunday afternoon for pregame, kickoff at 4:40. 102.9 ESPN Radio in Western Montana, your home for the Seattle Seahawks.
At the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden-fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from your favorite daily sports talk show, Tootell Nuanez. I'm here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom, last winter I got a sweet car starter. It's something I think everybody needs.
You know, Colter, I couldn't agree more, and my wife sure thinks so too. We've got a lot of sweet deals. We actually have it capable now where you can start it from your phone from anywhere you'd like. We have two-way remotes that'll confirm to you the vehicle started all the way down to our basic package starting at just $299 installed. Come on in and check us out.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Have you been in an accident and have no idea what to do? I'm here with Catherine from the Advocates Injury Attorneys.
Unfortunately, people are injured in accidents every day, and dealing with the insurance company can add even more pain to an already bad situation. That is where hiring the advocates can help. Let us guide you through the process and take on the hassles for you so you can just focus on getting better.
If you've been injured in an accident, give the Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. The Advocates are on your side.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good evening, Ryan Tootell, Colter Nuanez. Here's some sports news for you. A week of Big Sky Conference basketball is in the books, and only one team remains undefeated. That's the Montana State women. Lady Cat seniors Fallon Frigi and Oleana Squires each moved into the 1,000-point club as MSU blasted Southern Utah to keep the Bobcats atop the standings. Frigi scored 20 points, while Squires chipped in another 11. MSU is 56% from the field in a 91-65 victory. They're now 4-0 in Big Sky play.
The Montana men had no answer for Bodie Hume and the Northern Colorado Bears in Greeley on Saturday night. Hume, who was last year's league freshman of the year, drilled a pair of three-pointers to spark a 16-3 run to open the game. He went on to hit 5 threes and scored a team-high 22 points to lead Northern Colorado to a 74-66 win over Montana. UM senior Kendall Manuel scored a career-high 30 points in UM's first Big Sky loss.
In Missoula, Northern Colorado scored the first 8 points of the game and led all but 69 seconds, handing the Lady Grizz a 67-58 loss. That was UNC's 7th consecutive win over Montana, which was the first loss this season in conference play for the Lady Grizz. In the loss, though, Emma Stockholm, an outstanding night, 22 points.
And finally, the MSU men struggled offensively for their second straight league game, and Southern Utah used a 12-0 run midway through the first half to pull away for a 59-53 victory.
Everybody was winning, and now almost everybody lost in the state of Montana and Big Sky Conference men's and women's basketball. Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Outstanding to be with you across the state on SWX Montana television and Western Montana on the radio waves. Colter. Oh, by the way, yes, if you'd like to follow us, you can do it. Instagram, at 102.9 ESPN. Twitter, at 102.9 ESPN. Also at Gus Tootell, at Skyline Sports MT on Twitter. You can go check us out there as well. The Montana Grizzly men's team got a close but nonetheless strong road win at Southern Utah on Thursday night last week. Saturday, they continue the road trip. This is the second of a 3-game road swing. They'll play Eastern Washington this Thursday night in Cheney. But the Grizzlies go to Northern Colorado, and they fall 74-66. Kendall Manuel, as good as he's been, 30 points, and not just 30 points, only missed 3 shots from the field. What was 12 of 15?
I think it was 13 of 16.
13 of 16? Absolutely outstanding night for Kendall Manuel. He got open early and was the dude in this basketball game. But Hume and the Northern Colorado team in general able to carry the day. They were ahead for most of this basketball game, and Montana ultimately loses their first one. They're now 3-1. Still atop, by the way, the Big Sky Conference standings. They're the only 3-1 team on the men's side. There's a couple, in fact, 4 2-1 teams that haven't played their fourth game yet. So presumably there'll be more 3-1 teams coming on down the line. But the Grizzlies, a tough loss in a day where Kendall Manuel had an outstanding, career type of night.
Yeah, we talked about this after the Montana State Northern Colorado game because twofold here. One, Jeff Linder, Northern Colorado's head coach, his defensive style, his defensive identity is to chase teams off the three-point line more prevalently than any other team that the Big Sky Conference has, and they've been among the national leaders in terms of three-point attempts allowed and three-point field goal percentage by their opponents. He's totally content to trade twos for threes because in all levels of basketball now, the three-point shot it's become such a huge factor, and so many teams rely so heavily on it. And in the Big Sky, there's multiple guys on multiple teams that don't do. I mean, like a guy like Layden Ricketts, he's a catch and shoot three-point shooter at Montana State. That's all he does. He can't create his own shot.
Yeah.
But he can certainly score 15 points in a game if you get him open shots because he's a knockdown, spot-up shooter. And there's been guys across the league that are very much like that, and it's a good strategy that Northern Colorado employs. But secondly, they also have the best on-ball perimeter defender in the league, a guy who doesn't need help.
Yeah.
And that's Jonah Radabaugh. He's a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Sky Conference. He's absolutely, now that he's a senior, the best on-ball guy in the league. He had a couple competitors for that title, namely like Bobby Moorhead and Michael Oguine at Montana. But he is absolutely the King Kong when it comes to defensive players in the league right now. But then also the other guys that they're playing in Northern Colorado's rotation, Jalen Saunders is a good shot blocker. And Sam Maston is a very smart glue guy who's a smart basketball player, but he's actually a not good on-ball defender. But to mitigate that, I think we're going to see guys that are the second or third scoring options on teams score huge point totals, like Amin Adamu from Montana State did and like Kendall Manuel did, because Northern Colorado is going to solely focus on not allowing open threes in the flow of your offense and letting Radabaugh just bulldog your best on-ball guy. And that's what he did. I mean, you look at the stats. Manuel was 13 of 16, but he only shot 3 threes. He made all 3 of them, but he only shot 3. And the other on-ball guys, I mean, Timmy Falls was 0 right? I mean, he had no points. And I can't remember Josh Vasquez's stat line, but you have it there. What was he?
Josh Vasquez, 1 of 6 for 2 points. Timmy Falls, 0 of 7 for no points.
So there you go. You got Radabaugh on the 2 main ball handlers, and those guys are 1 of 13. Yeah. That's the strategy. They're trading 3s for 2s. Manuel was able to get to his spots inside the arc. I thought he looked better than he has probably in his career in terms of creating his own shot, getting a mid-range jumper. But that's part of the strategy is they want you to take the mid-range rather than take 10 three-pointers if you're a shooter like him.
It's completely true, but I also think that this marks a significant progression to me for Kendall Manuel in the following respect. He is only in his career, college career, both at Oregon State and then since he's been back at Montana, he has had the luxury of having so many guys who can drive the lane and ball handle and set him up that he can get to spots, catch and shoot. And he's knockdown. He's an unbelievable shooter. But it's a very different thing when, at least at times, you have to be the one who's dribbling the ball, shooting off the dribble, shooting 2-pointers in the lane, mid-range stuff, going to the hoop. Last year, he was not great going to the hole. He was not a great finisher around the basket. He has improved significantly in that because he's had to. And now he's starting to get into a place where he is more comfortable handling the ball, maneuvering in the smaller spaces inside the painted area and at least inside of the three-point line, and still can knock it down from the outside. So that's a big, big part of this. But you're right. The strategy that Northern Colorado employs certainly worked in their favor, in this basketball game, and they come away with the victory. In total, as I said, Montana 3-1. Eastern Washington, Northern Colorado, Southern Utah, and Idaho State are all 2-1. And then Sacramento State, Northern Arizona, Idaho, and Weber State are all 1-3. Portland State sitting at the bottom right now at 1-3. But the point is, we're 4 games in. 4 of a 20-game schedule. Everybody's got a loss. Everybody has a win. I mean, this is what we sort of expected in this. And I thought Travis DeCure had an outstanding quote after the game. He said the following, quote, "If you would have told me we'd be 3-1 coming out of this, I'd take it. Everyone's going to beat each other up in this league, and no one's going to go undefeated. But I would have liked to have played a little better, not only for ourselves, but to send a message and put ourselves in a really good spot. Now we're right back in the bunch. And that's so true. Like, he didn't have any, preconceptions that we're going to go undefeated. But to be 4-0 and out there in front again is a big deal, right? And now they're not.
We know the headliners in the league, and I've talked about them already this year. I mean, everybody knows Jarek Harding at Weber State. Everybody knows Mason Peatling at Eastern Washington. Everybody knows Harold Frey at Montana State. Everybody knows Saeed Pridgett and Kendall Manuel at Montana. But like I've been saying for a couple weeks now, this league race is going to be all about who emerges, because there's not these cores of really good guys, or I shouldn't say really good, cores of really familiar faces.
Exactly. It's guys that we don't know yet that we're going to know soon.
And watching the Northern Colorado game, I'll tell you this right now, one of the guys who was not getting the hype coming into the preseason that he probably should have and now absolutely will is Bodie Hume. Bodie Hume was the Big Sky Freshman of the Year last year, and he was awesome on Saturday against the Grizz. I mean, you got to realize, we talked about the dichotomy, or I guess not the dichotomy. We talked about the sort of perplexing nature of Colorado prep sports, and why isn't there the if you're the 5A Colorado Player of the Year, why are you not better than the Big Sky Conference in football and basketball? Because largely you're not. But that said, Bodie Hume was that guy. I mean, he was the Colorado Player of the Year. And so regardless of what you think of the quality of sports or whatever, that's a great get for Northern Colorado to get him, because Hume is I'm not going to say he's a Power 5 level player, but he's more than just a mid-major guy. I mean, he's a 6'6" guard who shoots threes, but I mean, he's got incredible length, probably close to, if not more than, a 7-foot wingspan. He's a great defensive player.
If you would have told me 6'6", I would have said you're lying. I mean, I thought he was
taller, right?
I would have thought he was 6'8", maybe something like that.
They list him at 6'6", 190. Okay. I think the 190 is what makes him look a little taller, but he has awesome length, though, too.
Yes, he does.
But I mean, he's a really skilled guy, and I mean, he's already hit 42 three-pointers this year. He's shooting almost 39% from beyond the arc. He's averaging 16.5 points a game, including almost 20 in league play. And so him paired with Jonah Radabaugh, that's a good duo right there. And the other guy who's from Northern Colorado who might sneak up and be one of those guys who makes a name for himself is Trent Harris. He lit up the Cats last year, both games. Brian Fish used to be the greatest coach at making sure that the best player on the other team didn't beat you. But then that became him being one of the worst coaches at letting the third or fourth best guy just kill you, because they would sell out their defense to take out that premier guy. And then they would just leave wide open shooters to just drop bombs on them, and that's what Trent Harris did last year. But Harris took the next step. I mean, he's averaging double figures right now. He was great against the Cats and good against the Grizz. So Northern Colorado, they actually have a trio there that's pretty darn good. But I definitely think that Hume deserves to be mentioned among those elite players in the league.
He does. And I honestly don't know how much fanfare he didn't have, maybe just because he was a freshman, but you and I watched him in person last year, went, holy cow, of course he's the freshman of the year, which is a big thing to get. And if you would have asked me, who was the best, what's the team that has the best tandem of players, I might have told you Northern Colorado with Jonah Radabaugh and Bodie Hume, because you look at the elite players in this league coming into this season. Harold Frey at Montana State, Jarek Harding at Weber, Saeed Pridgett at the University of Montana. Obviously, they're always going to have complementary players, but there was not another all-conference type guy. Certainly there will be as they emerge, but going into the season, I mean, maybe Mason Peatling and who at Eastern Washington.
Kim Aiken is the other one that I think. Kim Aiken is in the same vein as Bodie Hume, a guy who really was great as a freshman, but now is really looking good.
Absolutely.
So
far. But you said the right thing, too. The complementary nature of what Hume and Radabaugh are together is massive in a sport like basketball. It's just 5 guys running around. So anyway, it's wide open once again. Well, it's always been wide open. It'll continue to be that. But Montana drops to 3-1.
Other guys that I have seen so far this first 4 games in Big Sky basketball that I think are guys, if you really, really follow it in depth, you know who they are, but maybe that the common fan doesn't know quite yet. But guys that I think really have a chance to emerge. First of all, Jacob Davison was probably in line to be a first-team All-League guy before he got hurt last year from Eastern Washington. And he's back, looks fully healthy. He's averaging 18 points per game. So that trio, Peatling, Davison, and Kim Aiken. That's a great trio.
Yep.
Eastern Washington, they should be the league favorite coming in as they were voted, and I think that they really have a chance. Another guy who no one knows about, who you should know about soon, is Tariq Cool. What a good name, first and foremost. But he's a junior college transfer at Idaho State. New head coach Ryan Looney brought him in. But he's scoring about 15 a game. He lit up Eastern Washington the other day. I mean, Eastern's one league loss was to Idaho State, of all teams, in Pocatello. So Tariq Cool is definitely a guy that has established himself as maybe an early candidate for Big Sky Newcomer of the Year. Jabril Bello at Montana State, I talked about him last week after watching him in person for the first time, but he's a true big. He's a real 6'9" who can score on the block. I think he is a guy that has a chance to be in that same vein as breakout guys. And the other guy I was impressed with, watching him against both the Grizz and the Cats, was Luka Dolovic, who was a good shooter as a freshman last year, but kind of just same thing, relegated to sort of a role-playing role, but now he's in a way more of a scoring role in Northern Arizona, and he's been good early in conference play as well. So that's the fun part about this. I mean, you know me, I was salty at the Sac State game with the Grizz because I was just like, man, there's just not as many good players in the league. You know, you don't have that Marcus Graves on Sac State that you're excited to watch when they're in town.
Yeah.
You don't have that. Some of these other guys that have Jordan Davis at Northern Colorado. But there's some guys now that I'm actually seeing the teams up close and personal that definitely have a chance to be emergent stars.
Let's go over to the Lady Grizz, Coulter. They were also 3-0 heading into the weekend basketball game, and they fell. Their first loss to the conference schedule to Northern Colorado. Their 7th consecutive loss to the Bears, which is obviously Northern Colorado has been one of the elite teams in the conference with Savannah Smith the last several seasons, but nonetheless, a streak that the Lady Grizz would certainly like to see broken, but it did not happen on Saturday. They were down 8-0 right off the start, then went on their own 9-0 run. We're up 9-8, but essentially that was the last lead that they would have. It was a bit of an accordion game, but it never got all the way back after that point for Montana, who led for only 67 or 69 seconds in this basketball game. It was impressive. Emma Stockholm, outstanding in this game, had 22 points, but she had 14 points in the first quarter and 3 minutes. So really only 2 points in the entire second half. Obviously a major adjustment, a double team defensively, but there was really nobody else that then kind of answered the bell, and the Lady Grizz particularly sloppy in the second half when it came to the steals and all of that. Nonetheless, Montana, in a very wide open, perhaps outside of Montana State, Big Sky Conference women's basketball side of things, has had a very nice start to their season. They're 3-1. Spoke with Shannon Schwayen after the game and just asked what her message to the team was after the 3-1 start, but despite the disappointing loss.
Well, I mean, obviously this is one we wanted to get here at home. You never want to lose these at home. You don't want other people getting road wins. But our message was this league is going to be tough. Everybody's going to be jumping up and knocking people off left and right. It's one game. We've just got to learn something from it and, keep getting better. That's the whole key to the length of the season and the goal at the end.
So the Lady Grizz, again, now 3-1. Montana State and Montana are 1-2 right now. Montana State's 4-0. Lady Grizz 3-1. Nobody else is better than 2-1 in the conference. Sacramento State and Weber State are still winless at 0-3. So that's the good news for the Lady Grizz. They have talent on this team, and the return of Sophia Stiles, who is not 100%. She's obviously got the big brace on her knee that she tore the ACL on. She's also wearing a big brace on her shoulder and tweaked her shoulder in this game on Saturday, and was clearly in discomfort. So don't know what the issue is there, but certainly her on the floor, a difference maker for this team. Obviously, Mackenzie Johnston, a major leader, and the emergence of Abby Anderson, who also went down in this game, initially looked kind of scary. Think it's just maybe I say just, but a sprained ankle, who was the conference player of the week a week ago, but she did not return in this basketball game, which was also a significant loss for the Lady Grizz. But there's talent on this team. They are 3-1, but again, it's still a team that is trying to learn how to win in the way that they once did, and hasn't gotten all the way there yet.
Even with the injuries and even with the struggles that Montana has gone through the last 3 years, they've still been one of the best teams in the league at home. Last year, they finished 7th in the league with home wins over eventual NCAA tournament qualifier, Portland State, regular season league champ, Idaho, and Idaho State, who was, I believe, the 3 or 4, but
beat the top 3 or 4.
3 of the 4 teams that got buys in Boise lost in Missoula last year because the home court advantage is still very real
yes, it is.
For the Lady Grizz. And that's why Saturday's loss is a tough loss for Montana because Northern Colorado is not what they were under Cammie Etheridge with Savannah Smith. They lost a significant number of players, not only Savannah Smith, who was one of the 5 all-time leading scorers in the history of the league, but they also had their point guard hit the transfer portal in the offseason. So they're replacing several key members of their team. And the schedule for Montana early was good for a team that's trying to get its feet underneath it. I think they have some confidence now, the fact that they've been able to win 3 of their first 4 Big Sky games and also win 8 games overall. So they have wins under their belt, which is a good thing for this team because that's something that's eluded Montana the last couple of years. But what Shannon Schwain just said right there is 100% spot on. This league is all going to be all about 2 things on the women's side. Protecting home court, especially if you're the Montana schools, because you have the 2 best home court advantages in the league by far.
Yeah.
But secondly, when a result happens, no matter what the result is, no matter if you beat Southern Utah by almost 30 like the Bobcats did on Saturday, or you lose a tough one to Northern Colorado at home, you can't let that result impact the next result. You have to start anew every time that it's a new week in league play, because if you get too high and you're all excited about your 3-1 start, you're just going to go get swept on the road.
Yeah.
And if you get too low and you're dwelling about losing a home game that to a team that maybe you thought you were better than, you're also going to go drop a couple. And that's where this thing could get out of control on is if you lose multiple games in a row because of your mentality, not because of your talent. I do think that with the way that the league is, most of the most proven talent in the Big Sky is in the state of Montana. The Lady Bobcats, they know how to harness this thing already because they have 5 seniors. They've been building towards this year. They are the preseason league favorites, and in their 4 games, the only team to win all 4 games this first week of Big Sky Conference play, they were blowing people out. I mean, they looked like a well-oiled machine. Everybody's contributing. I think that 9 out of the 10 players that played scored. I think they had 4 players in double figures against Southern Utah after having 5 in double figures against Northern Colorado. So, I mean, when you got Fallon Frigie scoring 20 points, but then you also have Martha Cooter scoring 19. You also have Oleana Squires scoring 11. Now, teams can't choose what to take away from you because they can't take it all away. And so Montana State made a pretty resounding statement because, again, the 4 teams that the Montana schools played this first 8-day stretch are not among the best teams in the league. It's going to be Idaho, Idaho State, Eastern Washington, and the 2 Montana schools that are kind of battling it out for those seeded spots. Maybe Portland State, we'll see how they fit in the mix. But 3-1 for the Lady Grizz, certainly good.
Yeah.
But you can't be too proud of yourselves. 4-0 for Montana State, very, very good in the fashion that they did it in, but same narrative for them. They can't rest on their laurels whatsoever. But to me, just watching the 2 teams, good job by the Lady Grizz to get to where they were. But Montana State, they really made a statement, I thought, just by how handily that they took care of business and just how balanced they looked on both offense and defense.
Again, 91-65 over Southern Utah in just dominant. I mean, they've got a couple of 30 to 40 point wins already on this early season due to the Lady Cats. So, very impressive here in the early going. Did get a chance also to talk with Emma Stockholm after the game. Again, 22 points in this game. She led the Lady Grizz by far. In fact, the only player in double figures, but emphatically so, was 5 of 7 from beyond the arc. Scored most of those points, though, early in this game in the first, 17, 18 minutes of the game. So asked her what was working early.
I was shooting the ball when I was open. My teammates, I can't thank them enough. They were finding me. They knew that I had the hot hand, and they kept feeding it to me, and I just had the confidence to knock them down.
So got it going early. Then the defense shifted not as much later on. Go ahead.
Emma Stockholm is going to be the key for Montana because Kenzie Johnston is such a little energizer bunny. She plays so hard. She hardly ever comes out of the game.
40 minutes.
She's such a dribble drive type guard, though. I mean, she puts her head down and she can get to the rack on almost anybody. But she's not that great of a pull up shooter and she's not that great of a spot up shooter. Sophia Stiles is a great true point guard, great facilitator. But for the defense to loosen up and not be able to collapse down when those 2 young ladies are penetrating, it's going to be Stockholm that's going to have to run some screen and roll, some pick and pop. But if she can step out to the three-point line, which she does have that range, she's proven that she can hit from beyond the arc for her whole career. But like we always talk about, sometimes in league play, you know what you're going to get from your top two. How well does your third scorer play, or how well do they do? Because so often the matchup does cater towards taking away the dominant players, or at least limiting them, and letting the other players try to hurt you. You saw Emma Stockholm really hurt Northern Colorado. Then they adjusted and started doubling her, get the ball out of her hands. But that's all. If she's playing well, it's an advantage for Montana either way, because if she's drawn a double, it's more room to penetrate. And if she's singled up and she can make outside shots, she's going to be a key for Montana.
The last question for Emma Stockholm, where do you feel that you're at as a team right now after a 3-1 start?
I'm really proud of how we've been playing, and I know we're just going to continue to grow as a team and keep learning from our mistakes, and we're going to do just fine.
Well, there you go. Just got to one game, learn, move on to the next one. So that's what you got to do. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Coulter, the Montana State men's basketball team, quickly here. A loss at Southern Utah that they swept at home, the opening two in Big Sky Conference play, then lost both road games at Northern Colorado and then at Southern Utah, 59-53. Harold Frey had 14 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. So 19 points in 2 games for Harold Frey. Obviously, the caveat is he was being swallowed up by Jonah Radenbaugh when they were in Greeley, Colorado. But Adamu had a big game at Northern Colorado. He also finished nearly with a double-double, 12 points, 9 rebounds for him. Solid game, not outstanding per se for either guy, but nonetheless a tough place to play in a team that's better than they've been in Southern Utah, and a 6-point loss, but now 2-2 for Montana State.
Yeah, I mean, navigating this league is going to be a learning experience for Montana State, because not only do they have a new head coach, but they have by and large a new roster as well. And Harold Frey, he will find the answers, but Northern Colorado and then Southern Utah they showed what putting a bigger physical defensive player on him can do to him. And Frey's gone through stretches like this in his career. I mean, he sometimes has lulls scoring the ball, but he'll always find a way. He'll always come out of it. It's never something where it spirals. He never hits rock bottom, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
He'll have a weekend where he kind of struggles like he did this weekend, and he'll figure it out. Because, I mean, it's so hard to understate what being a gym rat, being a basketball junkie, being someone that has done nothing but live a life of basketball where you truly are in the gym all the time. I mean, Harold Frey has been playing pro basketball since he was 15 years old.
Yeah.
It's like Danny Sprinkle always says, the only time I ever think about taking Harold Frey out of the game is if he falls down and like smashes his wrist or hits his head or something like that. Because there's no conditioning issue. Like, this guy can play from start to finish the whole time and not even be out of breath.
Yeah.
But Frey will figure it out. He'll get in the gym and figure it out. And I do think that right now Montana State also they're lacking a key component to their team. Devin Kirby hasn't played, and if they can pair Kirby with Bello and they still continue to get the slashing production they're getting from Adamu, and Frey finds himself, now all of a sudden you have 4 legitimate players that are going to give people problems in the Big Sky Conference.
No doubt. The one thing I'll say, though, for Montana State is they have multiple players who are good players that can hurt you offensively. And I think, again, they have a very good blend of players, some complementary pieces. Harold Frey, though, is the guy that makes it happen. And he is going to be the 100%, no ifs, ands, or buts, first, second, and third scout for every single team that Montana State plays this season.
Absolutely. And they should just put him on the payroll.
Exactly.
I mean, who scouts the opponent? Harry, you do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So he should, though. He should go into Dan Russell and Chris Haslam and say, hey, here's my scout.
Yeah.
I mean, Haslam's been around the league for a long time, too. But, I mean, right. Harold Frey, he knows more than anybody in terms of the ins and outs of the players and the rosters and things.
That's right. But he's also going to be the guy on everybody else's list where this is the guy that we have to orient defensively what we're going to do around shutting him down. And so he was so good in the non-conference, the first couple of games of conference play, at being the guy running the show, and it was an improvement for him to not have Tyler Hall here. I think we're seeing the pendulum start to swing back a little bit, where now that there isn't a Tyler Hall to deal with, and all of the defensive focus can be on you and slowing you down in the best way possible, that this is going to be a higher degree of difficulty season for Harold Frey. I think he's going to be able to deal with that because he's that good of a player. But I think there's an adjustment period, not just with Jonah Redenbaugh, but with the entire defense that is going to come for you night in and night out. And that will be a fun thing for me to watch throughout the season. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. We take a break. Wild Card Weekend. What a weekend it was. What was the craziest part about it? Well, debate next.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey, it's Coulter, and I'm here with Catherine from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident or need help dealing with the insurance companies, you should give The Advocates a call. They can tell you if you have a case right over the phone.
That's right. It doesn't cost anything to call, and we'd be happy to talk to you and assess your situation. You don't want to have to deal with contacting the insurance companies and setting up a claim. We can do that for you. We take the hassle out of the process, so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give The Advocates a call, 406-640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve The Advocates.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up.
Looking for something refreshing but different? Stop by your local Town Pump. They've got the perfect refreshers. White Claw, Truly, and Smirnoff Seltzer 12-pack cans, $14.99. And Cook's 1.5 liter, only $10.99. Find all your refreshments at Town Pump, right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
When the mountains are calling, a Floco Mocha is just what you need to hit the road. Florence Coffee serves an exclusive, rich, all-natural chocolate blend for a mocha like no other. Top it off with real whipped cream, and you're set for whatever your day has in store. Get your Floco Mocha at any of our locations throughout Western Montana and go to FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering it. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
It's go time in the NFL, buddy. This list that I have in front of me is unbelievable. We don't have time to do it justice now. We will continue this tomorrow, I am sure. But let's at least get started. It's Tootell Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. You want to catch us out on the podcast, hear everything you heard, including our interview with Trey Flowers, cornerback of the Seattle Seahawks, go to the podcast. Podcast available wherever you get your podcasts, available all the time. And it is there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Here's what happened this weekend in the NFL. You ready?
Ready.
The Patriots lost at home as a 3 seed.
Yep.
Tom Brady's potential last pass as a Patriot was a pick six. The Saints lose again on a potential pass interference non-call. Kirk
At
Cousins,
home to the Vikings, no less.
At home to the Vikings, yes. Kirk Cousins was actually good. Clutch even. 2 games went into overtime. Deshaun Watson got lambasted at the same time by two guys spun out of it to throw the game-winning, what turned out to be the game-winning play. I mean, absolutely a legendary play. The Cowboys have hired Mike McCarthy, and Carson Wentz, the first time he gets a chance to play in the postseason, gets knocked out of the game in either was it late first quarter, early second quarter, but very early on, and
late first quarter,
and late first quarter. David tells me, and was not able to be impactful in this game, in a game that would, I think, have come down to the wire had he been able to play in it. Unbelievable list of things. What to you is the biggest stunner on this list?
Yeah. Kirk Cousins playing well in a big game.
Spoken like a true Vikings fan.
Let's be straight up, though. Kirk Cousins, there's so many statistics that revolve around this guy, but how many guys have you ever been able to say, like, if you were to truly identify all the big games he's ever played in, that his team has lost every single one of them until this game? And I know that sometimes the stats become skewed to fit the argument, and maybe somebody throws in a Monday Night Football game in the regular season and calls it a big game, but in prime time, on Monday Night Football, on Sunday Night Football.
0-9 on Monday night.
I mean, he had never won, and in this game, the Vikings were balling on defense. I mean, I was having this thought that Everson Griffin has had what NFL front office executives would call quote-unquote character issues ever since he was in high school. Now that his career has played out in the NFL, last year he basically had a psychotic episode and he had to leave the team. And he had to go get himself some real help. I mean, I think he was in a mental hospital. But the point of the story is that if Everson Griffin wasn't unstable, well, first of all, he probably wouldn't be the player that he is, but also he would be way more marketable. The guy is one of the best edge guys in the league. As far as power rushing defensive ends, I don't know if there's a guy that's better. There's a lot of guys that are speed at D ends, like Khalil Mack and Von Miller. They get all the endorsement deals, and they're way more marketable, and they're way more household names. Everson Griffin is a savage, man, and he was destroying the Saints. And but all I kept thinking was, how are the Vikings going to blow this? How are they going to blow it? And they almost did, until Captain Kirk comes up and makes one of the best throws of his career, dimes up Adam Thielen, and the Vikings right on off into the sunset. I will say, as a Vikings fan, I haven't been as excited about a game and a result in years. Yeah. And it was epic to watch. I was screaming at the TV. You know me, I don't cheer or scream at anything when I'm watching it.
Yeah.
I was freaking out, screaming. But on the other hand, I feel bad that because the Saints are the most complete team in the NFC, and now they're out.
I love that we're getting Seattle in Green Bay. I think it's going to be great. I hate that the Saints are out, and this is not against the Vikings at all. I still think that the New Orleans Saints are the best team in the NFC. They're the best team in the NFC. They lost that game, though, and that's it, and that's all. Here, I'm going to make an argument quickly against Kirk Cousins, which is actually going to be an argument for Kirk Cousins. You ready for this? What happened the play before he made the greatest throw of his career? Marcus Lattimore goes down with an ankle injury. So what do? You go deep against the backup cornerback, and we'll throw it up there and make the play. And guess what they did? And it was a dime piece. Don't kid yourself. Great throw. But again, this is the NFL. It's savage. What happens when one guy goes down? That's where we're applying the pressure. Okay, so Kirk Cousins, sure, monkey off the back, all of that. There's more to it than just he went out there and made a great play. They found a weakness as a result of an injury in the secondary and threw the football there, which you should do. Okay, so that's the first. But here's the other thing. You said already the defense played great. At some point, if you haven't won on Monday Night Football, it does come back to you as a quarterback. But this is the team game of all team games. There's no such thing as the quarterback unless you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers losing you football games, okay? So he isn't a great quarterback. He is a good quarterback on a team that is sort of up and down and is very, very solid, in fact, outstanding defensively. When Dalvin Cook is there, they're outstanding in the running game, but it's up to everybody to win a football game, not just him. And so I don't hold that whole primetime thing. That doesn't mean much to me.
We'll get into a lot more of this, but I'll believe Tom Brady's done with the Patriots when I see it. I'm not believing any of that narrative. That's garbage. Carson Wentz is not... He's not injury prone. He got slammed on his head by Jadeveon Clowney. That narrative needs to go away as well.
Yeah.
We'll get into the Mike McCarthy of the Cowboys, but I do think that that's a significant upgrade over the hand clapper. And Deshaun Watson, glad to see it because I love me some Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson was absolutely magic in a game that they should have lost. They won because of him. By the way, Tom Brady may well be done in New England. He ain't done playing football, but he might be done in New England. That, though, highlight for me. See you, Pats. Speaking of, we'll see you tomorrow. Tootell, Nuanez, ESPN Radio.
Hey, I'm glad you're back with your bitch. I mean, who this? I will never, ever, 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 ever be your side chick.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready